Hello and welcome to the GW Book Club, where I'm joined by my good friend Stu to chat about classic Games Workshop fiction. Today, we're going to be talking about an amazing Jack Yeovil, which is Kim Newman, one of his original stories by Box Tree that was published in 1993. It is Genevieve Undead. Stu, how are you doing?
Good, actually, good. We always have a really long chat before these that people don't really understand. Sometimes longer than the actual recordings are. So it always throws me when you ask. We've already covered that. But anyway, sorry, breaking the fourth wall. Yeah, I've been really good, thank you. How have you
Don't
been
tell
doing?
people our secrets, Stu. They want to listen into our. I mean, it's probably not worth listening into our boring chat beforehand.
Well, I
This
don't
is
know.
where all the good
Some
stuff
of it
is.
would be quite revealing, I think.
I'm doing well. I'm especially well, I think, because we're into my season of the year, which we've got October, we've got spooky season, we've got Halloween, and not only that, we had another Jack Yeovil book in the chamber ready to go. As people will know, I am an absolute fiend for Kim Newman's writing as Jack Yeovil. I think he's absolutely amazing. I think his Dark Future and his Warhammer fiction, some of the best stuff that Games Workshop has published, in my opinion. Absolute revelation for me. So coming back to a spooky Jack Yeovil book for Halloween, that's cool. I was very pleased. I was very pleased that things lined up for us to be able to do this.
Yes, yeah, it feels a while actually, and I don't know if it has been, but it does feel a while since we've picked up one of these lovely books, and that's been sitting on the shelf for quite a while. And yeah, it was really nice delving back into this after listening to quite a few things. We've been listening to Heresy, and I've listened to a little bit more as well. So it was lovely to dust off some old Warhammer again.
Yeah, because there's a certain feel to this era of writing. I think I've
Mm,
now read enough of it to sort of I've now got nostalgia for it, even though I didn't
yes.
read it at the time. I've now got nostalgia to like when we started the GW Book Club, and we were going through those original Games Workshop books, and Jack Yeovil was one of the authors who really stood out. So coming back is just really nice. And the first story in this collection, so Genevieve Undead, which centers the vampire Genevieve, this collection of three stories actually is very different. We get these sort of completely different, almost novellas and stories that explore different periods in Genevieve's life following the events of the earlier Kim Newman books. So the first one in this little collection of three is actually a sort of it's a continuation essentially of Drachenfels and some of the other stuff that we've seen, and it really gets us into I think a really fun story. So this is Stage Blood, is what it's called, and it is tells the story of what Genevieve and Detlef Serck, the playwright who was writing the Drachenfels play in the novel Drachenfels. I was about to say the movie Drachenfels, but that's not right. In the novel Drachenfels, having saved the day at the end of that novel, they go back to Altdorf. They open up a theater. They are the toast of the town, and Detlef has become this, the sort of famous playwright and actor who he always wanted to be. The Orson Welles of his time. And in this story, we get into a sort of Phantom of the Opera kind of thing. There is a trapdoor demon who lives in the theater and observes the plays. There's a new play being put on, which
Yeah.
is going to sort of delve into the darkness within Detlef Serck. And an artifact from the ruins of Castle Drachenfels has made its way into Altdorf as well. And that is manipulating people and trying to get close to Detlef and Genevieve to kill them, basically. So you've got all these different plots sort of coming together on the stage and around the stage in Altdorf. What was your initial impression of the story, Stu?
It was. I mean, they're all like you've already alluded to. They're all quite different.
Hmm.
Each of these stories are really different, and I think this one placed first was very good. Not least because they're slightly linked, at least chronologically, but
Hmm.
it was like going back home again a little bit, wasn't it? It was taking back to some of the tropes from the characters, things we knew, and also one of the main plots is drawing back to Drachenfels itself as well. So, yeah, really, really good. Lots of fun bits, and I think you often get that in shorter stories. There's lots of humour throughout all three, I think, or at least I thought bits were funny anyway. Um, but it was like a play, wasn't it? Again, probably more than the others. His usual kind of, you can imagine the scenes in a
Mhm.
movie. His chapters are like scene changes rather than chapters, which it just works so well throughout all of his stories. And I just thought it was really fun. Really enjoyed it throughout. There's not a lot to it. It's quite predictable in
Mm.
many ways. There's no, I think I guessed every bit that was coming throughout, but it doesn't matter either. I didn't feel cheated by that. I just enjoyed knowing almost the comfort of a Jack Yeovil, Detlef and Genevieve story, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And because it is a direct sequel, so we do continue the adventures of these characters post Drachenfels. We briefly, very brief cameo in Beast in Velvet,
Yeah,
but we get it's a dedicated story about them. What are they up to? How is their relationship progressing? And because Jack Yeovil here in this book more than ever is wearing his sort of inspirations on his sleeve, I think it
yes,
is really fun. I mean, like you say, there's a predictable quality to it because if you're familiar with the tropes that each of these stories is exploring, then you're going to be ready for the things that come. So this one, very clearly, it is the Phantom of the Opera. So you have this, the actual theater is haunted by someone who's has a history with the theater and who has been sort of ostracized because of their difference and because they fear to be seen and all of this sort of stuff. You've then also got, there's classic stuff about a new up and coming actor. She wants to
hmm
take the sort of limelight and she's the talk of the town. There's also, and I changed my own internal pronunciation of this every single time I read it. But the play that they're doing, that Detlef's latest play, is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Chaida. Or
Chaida, definitely Chaida
Aida,
was the way I read it.
right? So
Yes,
it's Jekyll and Hyde. They're doing
yes,
the strange case of Doctor Jekyll, the Kislevite,
yes,
and Mister Chaida, and yeah, it is. So the whole thing is about like Detlef's own internal conflict and the darkness that is sort of bubbling up within him because of his relationship, or potentially because of his relationship with Genevieve, who is a vampire, potentially because of his experiences and trauma from Drachenfels, and then also because he's getting older and he maybe fears he's losing a step, and he's always
yeah,
been concerned about his legacy, and that's all a big part of it as well. So you kind of have that, very much threaded through this particular story as well. And then when you get to the end, which we'll talk about in a minute, there's like Halloween and the Terminator as well.
yeah. Yeah. A lot happens. Um,
Yeah,
but
a lot. Because and because one of the things that's really interesting, and I forgot to check this out, but the sort of the MacGuffin or the evil sort of plot catalyst, the kind of supernatural element, or one of the supernatural elements of the story, is a mask that is found in
yeah,
the ruins of Castle Drachenfels, and it has been imbued with Drachenfel's own evil, and it is also some sort of weird magical thing anyway. And when you put it on, you become the sort of evil, like the fragment of Drachenfels. So I wanted to check out when the mask first came out.
yeah.
So
I've
this
made
is
some notes on
obviously
that
there's
myself.
a Jim Carrey movie in the 90s, but that's also a comic book. So it's I think a Dark Horse
Right.
comic book from earlier than that that was adapted into the movie. And I'm I would be very surprised if Kim Newman, who is, a pop culture critic, I would
Yeah.
imagine he's very aware of like indie comics and indie stuff. So has he sort of gone, "Oh, that's a fun idea. You put on this
Yeah.
ancient mask and you turn into someone else." I mean, it's obviously that's kind of trope that's out there in the ether anyway, but it felt very mask-y to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that as well. Like you said, Phantom of the Opera, Mask, and then a
Of
tiny
course.
bit at the end, when the beast is the trapdoor demon is when Genevieve meets him and she sees him probably for the first time. Reminded me of some of those scenes in The Elephant Man
Right. Okay.
with John
Sure. Yeah.
Hurt
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
he's first ashamed of the way he looks, and the first people that show him that I can't remember the female character's name in the Elephant Man. It's been
Sure.
so many years since I've seen it, but when she shows him kindness and befriends him, there was just little bits of that,
Yeah.
and it's quite noir as well. So it just felt like it fitted as well. But yeah, definitely the mask.
Yeah.
It's got to be. If not, it's the biggest coincidence. But I went straight to the film because my comic knowledge just isn't there. So I thought, no, it's got to have come afterwards.
Yeah. But that's because obviously the sort of Genevieve, her story within this short is she's not really sure where she should be. So she's coupled up with Detlef and they've been together for a time. He's growing older. This is a number of years since Drakenfels. And she's not because she's a vampire. So she's 660 odd years old.
668 in the first story.
668.
Yeah.
And she still looks like she's 16. Obviously, Detlef looks older and older and older. People are starting to think it's his daughter. And, obviously there's certain you might consider problematic elements to start with, but even if we sort of let that go and sort of you sort of age her up even in your mind a little bit, that's becoming more of a gulf, that's becoming more of a problem. But also she has lived for so long. Does she want to continue sort of living this life in the wings whilst Detlef is doing his plays and is consumed by his art? Or does she want a new adventure or something different for herself? So that's kind of her question mark that she's sort of grappling with throughout the story as well.
Yeah, there's lots of that. There's lots of talk about whether she's making him ill as well because he's starting to become more irritated. It takes longer to recover for when she feeds from him, and then also facing that, having to bury another partner, having to see another partner wither and die, and how painful that must be for her as well. So it's almost like running away is maybe not the fair thing to say, but we choosing to leave before you get to that point for his benefit, but also for hers as well. So that's it's I think it's almost her discovery story, isn't it? Discovery that maybe she needs to. It's time for her to move on more than anything else. The rest of it is it's fun and it's maybe the main plot, but it feels like the story's about her changing from the Genevieve we knew in Drakenfels to one that needs to go off and spread her wings. And metaphorical wings.
Yeah, I think that's
not
right.
a full-on bat vampire.
Yeah, I think that's a very good read. Yeah, I think that's entirely what it's about. And again, like you say, this being the first story in the collection allows Newman to sort of set that up. It gives him the opportunity to sort of reward us for our knowledge of the previous adventures and the characters, and to do something interesting with those characters who he obviously enjoyed writing for previously. So like Detlef himself. It's a really nice send off for Detlef. I think he gets to have his sort of final internal confrontation and grapple with his own art and his legacy and himself. Obviously, it's a sad ending for him because Genevieve leaves, but also we get to see that he is now the renowned playwright with a theatre, the best theatre in the empire, and everybody loves it, and everybody loves his work, and all that sort of stuff. So all of that's really nice. You pay off his character from Drakenfels really nicely.
Yes, yeah, he goes on and slowly, but well, I suppose he was already a great playwright and actor anyway, but it grows even more. Like you said, Orson Welles, Kenneth Branagh.
Sure. Yeah. But he was a bit infamous as well, I think, because he'd had a few failures and some bankruptcies, and he was in the debtor's prison and stuff. Now he's sort of
to start with, yes,
financially secure as well as critically and all that sort of stuff. So that's quite cool. And then you get a sort of, because there's with the trapdoor demon. I mean, like you say, Elephant Man's actually perfect, totally, and Phantom of the Opera, where it subverts the initial expectation because we're sort of, is it a demon? Is it a monster? It's a man who's been mutated, so he's actually a former playwright himself and a director who now haunts the theatre because this was where his life was, and he's still inside the sort of creature, but physically the creature is now almost Lovecraftian kind of like tentacle horror stuff.
Yes.
And that's why he doesn't reveal himself and hides in the shadows and all this sort of stuff. I really like there's a kind of charming element to it of the superstition of the theatre, where box number 7, they always leave a gift on opening night so that
Yes.
the trapdoor demon likes the play and looks favorably on the production and the run and stuff. So all of that's quite nice. And then yeah, the reveal being that he's not a monster. He might physically have become monstrous, but
Yes.
he's still the same person within. And that then comes obviously to the fore when Genevieve shows him some kindness and doesn't want to kill him. She wants to, help him essentially. And then he returns that and he helps them when
Mm.
the mask, the animus, as it's called, finally finds its way to Detlef and Genevieve and becomes a killing machine at that point. And then the trapdoor demon tries to step in and help out.
Yeah, well, he's the hero really at the
Mm,
end. And the complete vindication of the real man inside, who was punished, I believe, for maybe writing some plays that displeased the gods in the way that they were portrayed.
sure.
So he was punished with and his afflictions. It was quite a sad story in that
It
sense.
is a
So
sad
it's
story.
a tropey story, but it's fine and it fits really
Yeah,
well into Warhammer.
I think
Especially
so.
this Wolfrup version of
Yeah.
Warhammer, where chaos is slightly different, and you can be mutated but still be normal as a person within, rather than always wanting to do whatever, live your life as according to your god and worship them and sacrifice whatever it happens to be. There's definitely a more of an affliction element to it, which is good.
Yeah, I think you're right because that chimes with things we saw in like the other in the original
Mm.
Ignorant Armies collection, where it's very much about okay, people can be mutated and they can be afflicted, but they can still be themselves. And also, we know that Jack Yeovil, as an author, has a certain interest in that because we saw that with Varga Bruegel,
Hmm.
the dwarf manager of Detlef in Drachenfels, who
Yes.
the theater is named for in this story. He was mutated by chaos, but like remained a noble, like heroic character until his very end. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why Detlef continues to honor him as well. So that's obviously something that he quite likes subverting that. Okay, yeah, you can become monstrous, you can become mutated, but you can also still be a hero, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, we've got so this mask, it takes over, first of all, it takes over a priest of Solkan, of one of the
Yes.
gods of law, which we haven't seen too much of. There's a couple of instances in those early Games Workshop stories, obviously become less and less important over time, the gods of law as opposed to the gods of chaos. Solkan is still around even today, but we don't really see priests and like temples to Solkan quite as much. He puts on the mask and it kind of unlocks his desires. I mean, Jim Carrey mask style.
Yeah.
He has no inhibitions. His deepest desires come to the fore, and the mask gives him the confidence to take them. But then from that guy, the mask takes like his life essentially because he becomes a machine to deliver the mask to the city
Yeah.
so the mask can kill Genevieve and Detlef. So his body is just destroyed by this journey across the empire as fast as possible, and he's just a complete mess by the time he gets there. Um, then becomes the victim, just as a side note, becomes the victim of the Warhawk killer, which this is really fun. So our Dirty Harold from Beast in Velvet is investigating a series of murders in Altdorf that are taking place using a warhawk as the weapon. And it's mentioned a few times, and it's actually because it is a short story that Kim Newman had written, but it
Right.
wasn't published at the time. So if you read this story and you also took a look in White Dwarf where it said, "Oh, Warhawk is coming from Jack Yeovil" at some point, you would then have to wait another decade until it would actually be published by Black Library. But it is out there now. It's in the Silver Nails collection, so I'm very much looking forward to reading that. But yeah, just one of those nice cameos he likes to do, where he sort of the main events of this story loop through the events of that story. So I would imagine in Warhawk we would see a different perspective on those same events.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that
Hmm.
priest is dead, and the mask is passed over to the young actress who is sort of the up and coming, who can get close to Detlef and get one of her fellow actors to fall in love with her and become devoted to her. And the plan then becomes about breaking Genevieve and Detlef up before killing them. So there's obviously a seduction there, and Genevieve witnesses it and stuff like that. I quite liked that sequence of events because you get the opportunity for Detlef to either well, it's his opportunity to either become Mr. Chaida or stay as Dr. Jekyll, basically.
Yes.
He can either give in to temptation and evil, or he can resist. And obviously, you get to the end of one of the chapters, and it's like, oh, he's fully given in. And then in the start of the next chapter, he's able to pull himself back and resist. And Genevieve witnesses this, so it's all good, essentially.
Yeah, and a lot of it is literally played out on the stage as
Yes.
part of one of the performances
Yep.
as well. So the audience are getting their money's worth there.
Sure.
It's a bit
Yeah.
more violent because the reputation for this play is growing all the time as well, isn't it? As the sort of the subplot to this, and there's lots of people campaigning because it's too violent and too sexual, and although so there's lots of people involved in that, which again spills over into the last story in the book a little
Yes.
bit as well. So they're all interwoven. So that sort of really builds up the overall background to the story. But I thought it was quite amusing. Something that I picked up on is the Animus was a really interesting character. It's a very basic character. It's pure evil, but it but a non-emotional evil. I like the way it was described, and I should have copied the words down. But it's got no desire to kill or get revenge for the sake of revenge, but killing Genevieve and Detlef is its sole purpose, and
Yeah.
that's it. So it's not emotional about it at all.
Yeah.
It's just a linear. It's a job. I quite like that because it means that when it attaches to a character, you don't lose that character completely. It's
Mm.
definitely that you just enhances their desires as a tool to get its job done, so to speak.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and that's especially true, and you sort of see that in its clearest form when the sort of final the final owner of the mask or wearer of the mask, it's Reinhardt, who is this big hulking actor in great physical shape, who works out at the gym with a personal trainer called Arnie, which I like those. It's cheesy, but I think
Yeah,
it's
me
fun.
too.
And yeah, I very much see that as okay. This is the Terminator bit, or Michael
Yeah,
Myers as well. You could potentially, obviously wears a mask himself, and similarly an emotionless just pursuit and killer. So you have this Terminator or Michael Myers kind of villain at this point who is just emotionless and is just killing anybody who gets in the way. So just like walking through the audience, just sweeping people out of the way to get to Detlef and to Genevieve, and it becomes this kind of almost slasher horror movie escape from this relentless killer scene, like sequence of events, and they have to go down into the catacombs. And again, that is where the trapdoor demon shows his true colors and steps in and tries to save Genevieve and stop the Terminator, as it were. And then you get to a final confrontation in the very heart of the trapdoor demon's catacombs beneath the actual theater, and that is where the trapdoor demon actually absorbs the mask itself and kind of the
yes,
purest. It's quite nice actually because the idea being that the animus, the mask, brings out the hidden desires. It brings out the suppressed element of someone. That is why, so that the desire, the dark desires are what most people have suppressed, and that comes to the fore. For the trapdoor demon, it's actually because it's a genuine nice person. Even though he's become this thing, he's still just like loves the theater. He loves art. He'd been helping the actress to become a better actor because he just wanted to see someone perform amazingly. So the animus brings out this real purity in him, and he sort of sacrifices himself to save the day, and that was really nice, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once the he destroys the animus, what's left is a patch where the mask would have been, which is where his face now is, which is not where it should be on his body, but it's almost like his true face is suddenly visible.
Yeah,
And if anyone's any doubt, this isn't a physical. Originally, it was a mask, but since it was first attached to someone, it becomes sort of metaphorical. Really, it's not something you can
sure.
visually see. So these people aren't walking around with a
Yes,
mask on,
yeah,
especially just in case anyone's missed a little bit. Especially with us using the film Mask as an example.
sure.
There's
Yeah,
no
not a
big
big green
green
head.
face.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's a good point.
that
Yeah,
was a nice touch at the end, and I just that visually. I'm not visually by reading it, but yeah, visually just back to what you were describing there about it brings out the good in him because it was
yeah,
the good that was hidden rather than the other way around. So
yeah,
lovely. It was just nicely rounded off at the end, wasn't it? So pretty chaotic final scene or two.
yeah.
Um,
Quite high octane and fast paced.
yeah, considering the rest of it was not really because it's slow build, wasn't
Yeah,
it, through the acts to
sure.
the final crescendo of a little bit of violence.
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's an interesting point actually, or about the structure is that I would have been very happy for this to be a full novel. So I could have
Mm,
easily have taken 250 pages of this story with even more character beats, even more detail. I think Kim Newman's world building is so good. Like I
yeah,
love inhabiting this version of the Warhammer world. And some of that will be because there are so many pop culture references or like clear inspiration drawn and all this sort of stuff. It's just really cool. It's just a fun place to
yeah.
spend some time. It's as dark and as grim and as gritty as you want it to be, but it's also funny and interesting. And yeah, it there's just a lot of exciting and interesting things to see and sort of read about, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed that first one, and I to the point where I was a little bit sad for the first chapter or so of the second one,
Sure.
wishing because it was so different,
Yeah.
wishing that we were still in that other story and it was extended. As much
Yeah.
as I like the second one as well, I much preferred the first one to it, and yeah, there
Sure.
was a little
Yeah.
bit of a oh oh this is really quite a different
It's
change of
very
pace.
different. Yeah. I mean, because the first one, the stage blood, it feels very of a piece with probably for me, it's of a piece with Beasts in Velvet, even more than Drakenfels, I think, because we're back in the
Yeah,
city and we're, just the way in which it's all sort of played out and the world. Obviously, it's a continuation of Drakenfels, but it kind of
yeah.
feels like this is the city we just spent a novel in.
Yeah, there's lots of little nods and mentions to the political happenings
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
saw in Beast of Velvet anyway,
yeah.
and again that returns in the third story a little bit as well. You
Mm.
feel like it's well, it's because it is it's a linear story there, but the characters and some of the politics, some of the happenings, the revolutionary stuff was all that we've already seen as well. So the prior knowledge of that book is not essential, but it definitely adds to the story, or to all of them, really.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I mean, let's get into that second story then, because I shared your initial reaction to it. So
Don't
the
worry, it's not son of mask, and at no point does the dog wear the mask. It's like that
yeah, thank
I
goodness.
unfortunately I had to watch that a few months ago with my kids, and it's really awful. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we'll save it for a Warhammer Film Club episode. We'll cover that then. But no, this is Cold Stark House, which is very, very different in tone. So this is a story where, having just escaped from a prison, from a dungeon, a character who we've never met before is, I think it's Prince Kowalski.
Yes,
Yeah, I will probably massacre that name many
yes,
times. So he is a revolutionary or a would-be revolutionary. He escapes from a dungeon where he's got himself into some trouble with a bit of womanizing, and the Duke is it in Estalia, the or it might be Tylea actually.
yeah, so yeah,
The Duke has actually arrested him for seducing his wife and his daughters, this revolutionary guy manages to escape in a very cool, almost Count of Monte Cristo sort of way, in that he's ferried out on the cart of bodies of
The
all of the
corpse
people who have
cart, isn't it?
died in the
Yeah.
dungeon. Yeah, in the corpse cart. So he's at the bottom and he's covered in a mound of bodies, and he manages to get out that way. Eventually gets off of that and manages to get away, finds himself in a dark and stormy night, meets up with a couple of other people whose wagon has been overturned. The three of them find themselves arriving at a great mansion, their house of Udolpho, and in it there is a family, but this family are very strange. They don't quite remember their relationships with one another. Sometimes this guy over here is my great grandfather, sometimes he's my brother, sometimes he's my son. Lots of strangeness there. Really, really weird characters and it goings on inside this house. A lot of melodrama, I would say. And
Yes.
Genevieve is there, doesn't remember that she's the vampire Genevieve, only remembers that she's a member of this family and has exactly the same kind of challenges that everyone else has of remembering who they are. Weird family dinners, all sorts of strange stuff. The style of this particular short story is the entire thing is a pastiche or a riff on Gothic literature. So
Mm.
it is drawing on all of this stuff. I mean, even down to, obviously Adolfo is actually a house from a particular classic Gothic story. The first ever Gothic novel, as we would understand it, is Horace Walpole's Castle of Otranto. Very
Mhm.
similar elements. There's a giant armored knight at one point, and a character in that story gets crushed to death by a giant knight's helmet that falls out of the sky out of nowhere. So all of these just really weird happenings. There's even a character in this story who is called Otranto, or is mentioned and is called Otranto. So there's all of this sort of stuff happening, that is just pure Kim Newman going, I love random Baroque stories about Gothic mansions and weird families and inexplicable happenings. And I'm just going to put Genevieve at the center of that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very, very different, right? I mean, so you say your first reaction to it was just like a bit sad about it being so
Yeah.
different.
Just that it was, and I grew into it, and I enjoyed it, and I'm not as well read or versed with that kind of Gothic literature as you are, so I didn't make those connections. But it makes sense now you've said it. I can see that. I just wouldn't have been able to name any references. Um, I found it quite funny throughout, and I think
Mm,
that was deliberate.
mm.
It's almost presented, and again, my references are much more sort of, well, they're not modern, but they're definitely more pop culture-y as in some ways. But it made me feel like this could have been an episode from Tales of the Crypt, the way that they arrive at
Yeah.
the scary house. Um, if it's Adam's family-esque as well at
Yes.
times with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're like me and you're not as well read as Jordan is, there's elements of that in there as well. And I found it really fun.
Mm,
But I wouldn't have missed it if it wasn't there. If
sure.
the other two stories were just longer, I would have enjoyed. So it's absolutely fine, but it felt like an interlude,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you
Um,
mean, and I think because it's such a shift in tone from the story
hmm,
that we've just been and we'll shift back again, or to a
yeah,
slightly different tone for the third one again. It and because it's such a specific thing that Kim Newman is doing in this story. So yeah, I agree with those references as well. The pop culture references here, there's a lot of literary references, but there is also, like you say, the Addams Family and things like that are for sure a part of it. Even the name Cold Stark House
yeah,
is a riff on Cold Dark House, which is a like a I think it's 30s or 40s movie,
right.
black and white movie, again about a torrential rainstorm and some strangers finding their way to a big mansion that is creepy and has very weird familial relations within the house and people just behaving strangely. And it's this kind of like there's just an oddness to the
Mm.
place. And that oddness is also manifested in the people who live there and how they interact. And it's just off. It's just weird. It's got
Yes.
even, but you could go even to like the Tom Hanks movie, The Burbs, and
Yes.
that kind of
Yes.
thing. That just strangeness about people you don't know, and this could just be how they are. They could just be strange, or there could be something supernatural happening. And yeah, obviously, over the course of the story, it is revealed that old man Monmouth, who lives up in the attic or whatever, and hasn't got out of bed for 30 years, actually has some form of supernatural power, and is kind of manipulating all of the people who live in the house to just be characters in his personal soap opera. So even when they die, because they kill each other they're constantly bickering and killing each other off for to be in the will for who's going to inherit the
Yes.
house. When they die, they just come back the next day, and the same stuff happens again. It's great. I mean, it feels very much to me like this was Kim Newman pitching a Vincent Price movie. And
Yeah.
I recently
Yeah.
watched the Fall of the House of Usher that Vincent Price is in, the Roger Corman one from the 60s. And it just feels very much this. Like this is very like it could be a Roger Corman movie, I think, is what Kim
Right.
Newman is going for, as well as all of that other stuff. And for me, I loved it. I thought it was great. And
Yeah,
it
it's
is
good fun.
really different, but
There's
it's
no point
good.
I disliked it, but it's just, yeah, it felt a little bit different. And it was nice that it didn't, you could have been anywhere. It didn't have to be Warhammer, but it was
Mm,
nice there was, Talia was mentioned. It felt like we were sort of drifting off into a different part of the Warhammer world that we don't see as much,
sure.
maybe a little bit more now again. But it was fun. It was really fun. And as soon as I kind of relaxed into the idea of, you know what, just go with it. It's fun. It was fine. But I think it's just because I really enjoyed the first one and
Yeah.
that sort of style of delivering a Genevieve story or all those other characters we've already seen before or familiar with. I think I would have been happy to stay in there a
Sure.
little bit longer. But this was good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is that this one is so clearly Kim Newman just like having fun on the Warhammer dime that
Yeah.
if you're not interested in that, like if you, so I feel like I've become, as much as I'm a huge Warhammer fan, reading these books has made me a huge Kim Newman fan. Like I've gone off and
Hmm.
read a lot of his other stuff and I'm pursuing like copies of everything I can get hold of because I want to read all of his work. Because of that, like I've grown to be such a fan of his work. Seeing him just go, oh, I thought I would just do this really random thing with Warhammer for a change was kind of fun, like just in and of itself as a strange experiment that he's undertaking and just having a great time. I
Yeah.
think I would imagine that when it came out, there would be people who would be like, I don't know why that story is in this collection at all. Like it's
Yes.
not particular in the not that anything really is Warhammery or is not Warhammery. I know I've used that sort of terminology before. Whether or not it feels as much of Warhammer as Drachenfels did, for instance, or some of the other work in the sort of GW books. There have been some of the books where we felt when we've talked about them on the podcast that it didn't feel like Warhammer to me. It didn't add to my sort of understanding of this setting. I could understand readers of this story having that opinion about
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
because it does feel quite different. I mean, you kind of have to take a certain amount of like there's a few anachronisms in Kim Newman's work in the Warhammer world where like the way the theater is described in Stage Blood
Hmm.
feels like a more modern theater. It feels like a Phantom of the Opera theater
Yeah.
more than like say a Shakespearean theater, which and I could be wrong, but in my reckoning, I imagine an old world theater would be closer to Shake like the Globe,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
It
I
would
think
be
visually maybe that's what you'd expect, but the way it's described absolutely is.
yeah.
There's definitely lots of modern references. Well, the gym for a start,
Yeah, the
but
gymnasium. Yes. Sure, yeah. And I'm sure there were gyms, but would it have been personal trainers and all that
yeah,
sort of stuff? Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah, that
I
was it
can
more than the gym. The fact that he had a personal trainer.
yeah. Yeah, and I could be totally wrong, and it could just be my own like perception of it, where I'm thinking, oh, well, it'd be like a Shakespearean theater. I guess there would have been theaters, and I don't know. I don't know when opera houses, the origin of the first opera house. I'm not sure when that would
Mm.
have been. So it could be totally fine, but it's one of these things where like I kind of had to decide, oh no, I'm okay. I'm happy because I enjoy the story. I'm happy to go with chandeliers and the stalls being rows of seats and there being boxes and
Yeah.
stuff. Like I will accept those things even though I don't necessarily see them in my version of
Hmm.
the Warhammer world very often because
Yeah.
on the whole it all sort of works together. And this story is kind of like that as well. It it could easily be of a very different time period uh,
Yes.
and a different setting, but
Yeah. I
I'm
think
happy for it to be in Warhammer.
imagine I was thinking uh, that house as soon as because of the weirdness of it and the familiarity with that kind of cinema probably more.
Mm,
My brain probably went Georgian, Victorian, Edwardian more than what I should have been thinking about in
sure.
terms of a Warhammer stately home, which is
Yeah, because it'd be
essentially
like
what it is as well.
Tudor or
Yes, it would have been
uh,
rather than just pure haunted mansion. But yeah,
sure.
my brain probably just went straight to haunted mansion.
Yeah, which is where mine went to, and but I accepted it. I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah, it was
that's
fine.
fine. That still works for me. But yeah, very interesting story. I personally enjoyed it. I think it was great to have something so different in this collection.
Hmm.
And I think whilst I will admit, just being with my friends Detlef and Genevieve in the first story was really good. And Genevieve's not really in this story very much. It's much more
No.
about Kozolski, the prince, the revolutionary prince character. It's like much more his story than anyone else's, which is
Mhm.
fine and that's cool and that's a good way to like expand the world again because it Newman also does these fun things where he will mention these characters in the other stories. He didn't explain who he was. He just said, "Oh, that guy's still at large." And then it's only when you get to this story that you find out, "Oh, okay, well, this is his crimes and why he is
Yes.
at large."
Yeah.
That's quite nice. And there's some other stuff as well from both stories that, like you say, bleed into that third one, and you get more information there. But yeah, a good story, a fun story, very different. I can't imagine ever seeing anything like this again in Warhammer fiction. It
No.
feels very
No.
of its time as a just there being the opportunity to write it at all.
Yes. Even with the horror imprint they do now, I imagine they would have to stick a lot closer to the IP to
Yes.
make sure it was protectable.
Yeah, I'd have thought so. And I just realized that I got the name of the film wrong. It's The Old Dark House is the name of the movie.
Right.
I'm just going to correct that because it would annoy me, and I'm sure it would annoy someone else. But yeah, I was just double checking what the name of the third story was because it's not as memorable for me. So the third story was Unicorn Ivory, and I
Hmm.
think this is probably the shortest in the collection.
Yes, it's a little bit shorter. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one is sort of much more traditional, really. So this we have Genevieve has somehow found herself having to work for Morn and Tybalt, so the Emperor's sort of one of his right hand man and one of his advisors, the head of the treasury, and uh, he's got something on Genevieve and has threatened Detlef. So she has been sent in order to sort of clear her name and get herself free. She's been sent to kill one of the Grafs of Middenheim and to just take him out, make it look like an accident whilst they were hunting, make sure there's no witnesses, and then you're free and clean. And when she first arrives, or was initially there, he kind of seems like he's an all right guy. So he sort of helped to rally people after the fog riots that had happened in Beast in Velvet. He had helped to rally people in defense of the Emperor and to bring a bit of order back to the Empire and all this sort of stuff. So he kind of seems like he's perfectly fine. He loves his son and he just loves a good hunt is his kind of thing. And they're going to go off hunting unicorns. Over the course of the story, we discover that maybe he's not quite so wholesome. He's an enormous misogynist and like a quite bad guy, a terrible father, not actually even the father of the son in this case, and also a murderer as well. So
Yes.
he's a bad guy. Um, and Genevieve, and then the sort of question becomes like, is Genevieve gonna kill him? And the hunter becomes the hunted, becomes the hunter, becomes the hunted again,
Mhm.
as they're out trying to get this unicorn mare, who's like one of the most deadly creatures in the old world, is how they're described. They're trying to do that hunt at the same time as Genevieve's hunting him, at the same time as he actually knows she is, so now he's hunting her. So there's some interesting sort of like back and forth by the time you get to that. I mean, what was
Yeah.
your feeling on this one, Unicorn Ivory?
I enjoyed it. It was she was a lot more front and center with the story, which was important, I think. Again, after the middle story. It felt Warhammer-esque as
Mm,
well. It felt recognizable. The characters are all pretty good, actually. I quite
yeah,
like they're all quite strong. Not many of them likable.
sure.
There's the his son that isn't his son. What's his name? Dormus, something like that.
Yeah, a bit
The-
of a strange name. In fact, it didn't roll off the tongue. I think some people call him
no,
Dory. I think it was
he's a
Doramus.
Doremus. That's it, Doremus. Yeah, he's got a bookish student. And but he's obviously okay. He's got a nice character, but aside from that, everyone else is not particularly likable. But they were good, strong characters though.
Yeah.
So your Otho was horrible and but a bully that got his comeuppance.
Hmm.
I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was really simple. There's not a lot going on there. There's not many layers. There's a very basic sort of twist at the end, but it's not really a twist, is it? It's more of a just
Sure.
a plot development or something. But it's pretty simple. But I just thought it was a simple Warhammer story. I don't really know what to say about it because
Yeah, no, I mean that's
it's one
fair.
of those. It was so simple that when you start breaking it down, I don't think there's an awful a lot
So I
of
won't
layers
counter
there.
that because I think
Mm,
where this one succeeds for me is that the sort of it's about the characters, but it's
mm,
also about the stories people tell, which I think, and I'll sort of expand on that actually,
mm.
because I think this is really interesting with the early Warhammer fiction, is just how much most of these books are about storytellers. And that, whether that's Orfeo, an entire trilogy of like, here's a guy who's going to tell some stories, whether that's Detlef and we're going to tell these stories through the framing device of plays, and that's going to be like a huge part. In fact, all of these stories feature many references to like other plays in the Warhammer world. People,
Yeah.
it's a really interesting idea because obviously we know Kim Newman in Dark Future, for example. He uses lots of pop culture references to like sell the world, build the world, and to give you like points of reference, literally, so you can kind of understand things more. In this particular book, in these three stories, he seems to be very regularly giving you in universe points of reference. Like he's constantly saying, "Oh, this character is behaving like this made up Warhammer play that was very famous about a demon or something." Like he
Yes.
does
Yeah.
that loads. It's really interesting. Like he's creating his own pop culture references in the context of the
Yeah. I really
story.
enjoyed that, and you do get those layers through all of them,
Yeah.
especially the first and the third more than the middle one. But yes.
Yeah, but it is in the middle one as well, which is quite cool. But yeah, it very much we get the whole crux of this particular story is like how Graf Rudinger has kind of told the story to his son, like of his own life, of who he is and the legacy he wants his son to live up to, because it's not even his son, and like it was his best friend's son, Count Magnus, with his wife, who he then murdered, and he let the best friend off because he was like, "Oh, he was seduced by my wife, so it was my wife
Yeah.
was the one at fault, not my friend." This is why he's a terrible person. But like he's telling this story of who he is to his son and
Hmm.
who his son is to the world, who he wants his son to be. So there's quite an interesting element to that. And then Genevieve steps into it and she's given a version of events from Tybalt to you've got to kill this guy for this reason. The reason she actually wants to kill him by the end of the story is because she now understands the sort of truth behind the stories of who this guy is. So I think that's quite an interesting thing. And yeah, my broader point, which I kind of derailed myself from, was just that across all of the Warhammer fiction of the the 89 through to like 95, there's loads of stuff that is like we're going to have storytellers in the context of the Warhammer world telling each other stories. And I don't
Hmm.
know what my broader point really is. I just find it very interesting that a lot of the authors who were tackling the Warhammer world were interested in going, okay, how would storytellers in this universe explain it?
Yeah, it feels like that. I don't know if they ever sat down and planned it, but there's a lot of check marks and nods to other stories, especially other short stories and
Mm,
characters and things across all of these earlier books, which is really nice. And what I meant by I don't know how much to say about it. It was more this. I think it's a fairly simple idea
yeah,
done well, and I
sure, sure.
enjoyed it. But I didn't think there's nothing particularly sort of groundbreakingly deep about it. Yes, it is interesting that we learn he's not a nice man, like you said. He's a murderer as well, and you see that play out again with the Otho character
Mm,
actually sleeping with his current mistress, and then that follows again. He ends up killing her,
mm,
or at least we believe killing her at one point, and so you see it repeated, and that's the repeating of it is what shows him up to his son that he's not his son. So it feels like there's lots of twists and things, but it feels fairly straightforward, but it is well delivered.
yeah,
And in a short space of time as well. Is it 60, 70 pages? About 70
yeah.
pages, probably. It's
It's quite brief.
not very,
Yeah.
not very
And
long.
I guess as a point about the entire book, like
Mm,
all Kim Newman writing for the GW book series, it reads so quickly. Like I don't know if that's structurally, I don't know if that's just the way his prose works, but I find myself flying through them. I just think they're really
yeah,
digestible, really simple, but I think there are big ideas and cool things happening behind the scenes that you can sort of chew on. So it's not that they're empty or hollow or anything like that. They just move quickly. I guess
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
compelled. I want to know what's going to happen next every time. Yeah, but there was I had a question around. So there's obviously in this particular story more than any other, I would say, especially by other authors, but even by Kim Newman, who touches on sort of sex and that kind of side of things in his stories more frequently than probably any other Games Workshop author. Then or now, I would imagine. You know,
Hmm.
I think you know, you take the Horus Heresy for example. There are elements there, but it's very, very brief. Very like it's
Yeah.
not really explored like what sex looks like in this universe and with Space Marines involved and all that sort of stuff. Like I by which I mean
And
like
what it is usually Emperor's Children, and that's probably not the kind of.
But yeah, here there's obviously a lot around the sort of mistresses and the
Mm,
affairs and all of the sort of congress that takes place there and what that then results in and the murders and stuff. But then there's also like when they kill the stallion, the unicorn stallion, and it sort of it dissolves. But one of the things it does is it spews its seed across the floor, and then the Graf has his son like sample some as like
mm.
this is how you'll become a man. Like you need to take something from the kill in order to like take its strength. There's a really interesting thing there. I mean, I think part of that is tied to the toxic masculinity of this character,
Yes.
and it's kind of showing. Look, it's a very literal like toxic trait that he has. But I thought that was quite, you know, that it's quite a graphic idea, I suppose, to see in a Warhammer story. So I guess is my point there.
Yeah, yeah. He's not. He's never been shy at tackling
Mm,
those things throughout, and manages to do it in a less weird way than maybe other authors that popped up. But some of the series that we tackled earlier on, because it doesn't ever feel weird. It
mm,
doesn't ever feel gratuitous either.
yeah,
It's not most of it as much as like the example you gave there. It's graphic in a way, but it doesn't feel that when you're reading it. It's not done in a.
sure,
It is definitely not there. It doesn't cheapen it at all. It's not
sure.
done in a
Yeah.
way you think, oh, that's a bit there to get the teenage boys interested in it and look at this, read these bits. But
Yeah, it's not.
no,
Yeah, yeah, that's
I
right.
don't. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't. I don't think at any point, oh, that's a bit much. I think it's right. I mean, he plays into obviously Genevieve's sexuality quite a lot, and the connections with sex and her feeding, because it can be just purely feeding, but very often isn't, and it's very often done with a lover,
Mm.
and that's something that you see with stories around vampires anyway. That's just extremely well linked to
Yeah.
to that kind of story arc. And we could go off on many tangents about that, and that's maybe what some people look for
Mm.
in that kind of story as well. So he's there, and I think he enjoys that, and maybe he enjoys that side of the vampire storytelling, and I imagine lots of people enjoy that as well. But again, it still never feels like it's pushed too far because there's nothing graphic there at all, not really.
Sure. Yeah.
Not too bad. I just think it's done well, actually.
Mm.
And I'm never approved with those, but people that have been with us for these have known when I've said in previous stories, and I just felt like it was there purely for the sake of titillation,
Sure.
whereas I never feel that with the Genevieve stories and Jack Yeovil's work,
Sure.
or Kim Newman's work.
What did you think of the sort of final resolution on the unicorn mare as well? Because that was obviously they were out there hunting this great beast who is ferocious and dangerous, but at the very end, sensing so Genevieve has defeated the Graph and kind of everything's come to a head and has been resolved. She then embraces the unicorn and they sort of
Yeah.
hug almost, and then she senses that the unicorn is like done, as is
Yeah.
probably as old as her, so 600 odd
Yes.
years old, and then she kills it to put it out of its misery.
Yeah, well, I think it's almost a metaphor for Genevieve's own potential issues of loneliness, isn't it?
Mm,
But yeah, I think it mentions that the mayor has run out of males. There's none left. There's
yeah,
nothing left for her now.
sure.
So yeah, it's her time, and she puts her to sleep out of her misery. But maybe and Genevieve can't do that herself, and so she's got to carry on
Mm,
and work out how to live her nearly immortal life. Obviously, she can be killed, but in a certain specific way. So maybe that's what he was trying to get at there with that
yeah,
sort of that
that does
juxtaposition of
make
those
sense.
two
Yeah.
things.
And
Mm.
actually, it leads to quite nice because when they talked early on about how the sort of classic line is that if you're going to go and hunt a unicorn mare, only one of you is going to come back. Like an entire hunting party will go out, but only one of them will return. And then that is what happens. Everyone either dies or Genevieve
Yeah,
herself just goes off into the woods. So only the son returns, and he sort of
yeah,
reflects on that, the fact that everyone did die. And Genevieve's decision to go off into the woods is an interesting one. She's back in the Empire, but she's just going to sort of wander the wilds, it seems.
yeah. I think it was for a while.
Mm,
It just leaves it open, doesn't it? For she's somewhere easy to start to the next story if there was another story.
yeah,
So I think it was more of a reflection of where she was in her life, where she's not particularly happy at that stage. She's obviously still loves Detlef. Partly the reason she was doing what she was doing was to protect him,
yeah.
but also realizes she can't be with him. And yeah, it feels like she's in a darker place in her life at the moment, just sort of
Mm,
going through the motions. So we're going off for a bit of her time.
sure.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah, yeah.
But
I
it
did.
felt it felt fitting, didn't it? I mean, where yeah, I don't know if you need to describe where she's going. So at that point, it was just probably a neat way to
Yeah, I
end
guess
it,
it's
I
quite
suppose.
poetic, isn't it? And because she
Yeah,
could literally just walk out the woods the next day and go off and do something. I suppose it means she's walking away from the world she's known or the
yeah,
civilization and looking for something different. She's free of Detlef. She's free of Tybalt. She's now free of this obligation. So
yeah.
who knows? She could go anywhere, I suppose, is the point, isn't it? Yeah. I mentioned him before, but there's a character in this called Count Magnus, which is
Yes.
also another reference. I don't know if you know familiar with M.R. James stories. There's a Count
No.
Magnus story about traveling to tombs and getting into all sorts of stuff. I don't know. It really resonates in the story. I think it's just a cool name, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that is another reference. Just yet more of the sort of Yeovil grabbing stuff and just sticking it in because it's cool to go. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
which I imagine
which you do.
yeah, but I think it's one of those things that you probably wouldn't be allowed to do now. Like, I can't
Uh-huh.
imagine you would be allowed in a Black Library novel to just be like, okay, this character is going to have the same name as a character from this ghost
Mm.
story over here, or this movie, or this politician. I imagine it's probably much like more distance is needed these days.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. It depends how obscure they are and whether the editors would
Sure.
know. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really obvious.
Yeah. But
If we're reading the Horus Heresy and the Sigillite Spock, like pushing it a bit too far. But yeah, I don't know how
I
well
don't,
known Count Magnus is. Maybe to some of your viewers, and less of mine.
I think Brother Spock and Brother Kirk that could be quite fun as a Space Marines squad.
You get away with Brother Kirk. I'm not sure Spock you would, or maybe.
What was your favorite of the three stories then?
Definitely the first one.
Yeah,
Definitely the first one. I did enjoy them all for different reasons, and it was a really nice, rounded book in the end. But definitely the first one.
yeah,
And
I
I
think that
would
was
have,
mine.
yeah, if I could have had that as just a full length novel, fleshed out, then I would have, yeah, would have. Because I think there's enough there to make it into a full novel for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also a lot of references to Katerin, the
Mm.
vampire Tsarina of Kislev, which we know from Kim Newman was going to be his next story. He wanted to do a sort of,
That would have been brilliant, wouldn't it?
yeah, I think it was a dynasty style soap opera with vampires in Kislev for a few hundred years,
Amazing.
which does sound amazing and is definitely seeded here. There's loads of stuff here that's like, this is why Katerin is just wild and ridiculous as a vampire ruler. So yeah, it's a shame. And also Genevieve hung out with her, so there would have been an opportunity for Genevieve to be involved. So
Yeah, the
it's a shame that
crossover.
didn't happen.
That'd have been Dallas, and then he got Dynasty.
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. But yes,
There's
I
some
think I
references
agree.
for you.
I think the first one is like, I think I enjoyed Statehood the most. I then
Hmm.
probably enjoyed the Cold Stark House,
Mhm.
that's the sort of second novel, and then the third one I did enjoy. Perhaps was my least favorite of the three, not because it wasn't good and I didn't enjoy it, but just because it didn't do as much for me in terms of like it wasn't a fun kooky experiment and it wasn't a
Yeah.
continued exploration of like the characters we've seen. It was another adventure in Genevieve's life, kind of like Red Thirst in a way, which I also at the time wasn't as keen on as some of the other Kim Newman stories, Jack Yeovil stories.
Mhm.
I imagine though that when I come back to reread that story and Red Thirst, which I will be rereading both, I think I will enjoy them more probably because they're sort of part of the fabric of that story and that world.
Yeah, I think so. I think as much as I preferred the third to the second one, the second story is a better story. It's a better written story.
Mm.
It's doing more.
Sure,
The
sure,
third story would be the mass market short.
sure.
The
Yeah, yeah,
thing you'd put in a white dwarf because it would be instantly recognizable as a
sure.
Warhammer tale is hunting. It's a much simpler story.
Yeah,
Or at least on its base level anyway. So yeah, definitely the first one was my favorite, and the second favorite was the third. But yeah, the middle one is really really good.
mm,
But
yeah,
it almost want to just take it out and enjoy it on its own, and not as part of that, if that makes
yeah. I
sense.
mean, it definitely feels it's not as connected to like Genevieve's story, ongoing adventures of
No,
Genevieve, because it's such a specific event. Like it's a day in her life that she doesn't remember really and doesn't solve for herself either, really. So you're kind of just getting this a snapshot. Like it's just she cameos in someone else's really weird tale. So
yes,
it's yeah, it's interesting for that value.
would
Um,
always prefer that at the other end. You imagine that after she'd wandered off into the forest, that
right.
she kind of lost herself, and then she found herself in that house,
But
and that
yeah, I
was
mean
her
that would be
awakening again.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does it rank as a book for you compared to the other, well, the other Kim Newman stories, but also the other? GW books.
Oh, he's right up there with the other GW books for sure, because
Yeah,
his Kim Newman stuff is just brilliant. It's not my favorite Kim Newman one, but Dragonfuzz is better.
sure.
Um, but yeah, he's up there because they're just great, aren't they? They're just so easy
Yeah,
to read and they're so well done.
yeah. So is a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Absolutely, thumbs up. Really
Yeah,
good.
I've put a thumbs up as well. Well, I think we've still got out there is just a couple more short stories from
Hmm.
Jack Yeovil, from Kim Newman writing as Jack Yeovil, that hopefully we'll be able to cover in a future book club one day. Because I think we've got the Warhawk story, and
Yep.
there is Silver Nails, and then I think Ibby the Fish Factor, which I believe is very short. So that's kind of it, and then
Sounds like it should be.
So yeah, I mean we're almost at the end of our journey with Jack Yeovil. So I don't know when I will be able to bring myself to read those final stories because you kind of always want there to be something left out there still to discover. Um, as much as I want to read them as well. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a there's a bit of tension there. I guess we'll have to find out. But we will be back. We've got a couple of more episodes we want to do before the end of the year, haven't we? We're going to do a we think it'll be a non-fiction, a Warhammer Armies book for the next time we meet, and then we've also got some fun festive tales that are actually not published by Games Workshop, but are by Games Workshop authors and do have some relationship with some of this stuff. So I think that will be fun, and maybe one of them is a Kim Newman. I can't keep it under wraps, but yeah, I think that that will be fun as well. But until then, Stu, where can people find you online?
Miniature Realms. Head over to my YouTube channel.
Yep, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, all of those miniature realms, right? I'll put them all in
Just
the
everything,
description
yeah.
down
It's all
below.
miniature realms, but yeah, primarily all those other things just promote the YouTube channel, which is it's what it's
Yeah,
all about, really.
yeah, and I'm Jordan Sorcery everywhere. As well as this Jordan Sorcery Pods channel, there's also the Jordan Sorcery channel on YouTube, and then yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky and Patreon and all sorts. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery.